As we all adapt to a COVID-19 world, BMI Tampa would like to thank our chapter sponsors for their ongoing support of manager education.
So we'll go ahead and get this kick started and just welcome everybody to our 911 emergency dispatch webinar. This webinar is sponsored by Nature Zone Pest Control, Parking Lot Services, Concrete Painting and Restoration, Appleton Reef, PBG Paints, Mitchell Insurance Services, ACPLM, Fieldstone Landscape, LRE Foundation Repair, Yellowstone Landscape, BB&T Association Services, Down to Earth Landscape and Irrigation, Delta Engineering, Reynolds Painting Group of Florida, Centennial Bank, PCS Insurance Group, Florida Paints, and Crown Roofing. And we're going to just start off here, guys, to let you know that there's been some technical difficulty today with our video. So we're not able to get a video from Brian and Tammie, but we do have some other images to put up that I'll put up really here shortly. This thing is a pain in the neck. Slideshow, play. So you guys, you want to tell us a little bit about yourselves? Tammie and Brian, Tammie Bishop and Brian Torres. They're both from the Tampa Police Department call center. They're both supervisors. And yeah, I'll just let you guys introduce.
All right. Hi, David. Hi, Tricia. My name is Tammie Bishop, and I am one of the evening shift supervisors in charge of all of evening shift. I've been here a little over 25 years now. Brian is one of my supervisor ones that is assigned to me, and he foresees or oversees everybody assigned to our shift. How long have you been here?
I've been here for 7 years now. June.
Wow.
Working here, yeah. Mm-hmm.
He's a supervisor
For about a year and a half.
Year and a half.
Roughly.
And I've been a supervisor since 2008.
Wow, you guys have both been there a long time. Now, I do want to let all of our attendees know that if an emergency situation arises, Tammie and Brian may need to cut off of the webinar because they have other things to take care of. They are both on their shift right now, and they are overseeing the call center. So we totally understand if that happens, you guys. We'll just hope that it doesn't.
Okay. Hope not.
Now, Tammie, you were telling me, I wanted to show them a picture really quick of, can you guys see these that I'm scrolling through here? There's a picture of the Tampa, is this just a portion of the call center?
That's actually most of it. Yeah, there's a couple more positions on the left-hand side of that screen and on the right-hand side, but that is a recent picture. We just had all of our furniture replaced, and that's
nice.
When we were vacated and at our backup center. That image was taken. That's why you don't see anybody in the picture. But
And you had said to me before on the phone that you guys are supposed to kind of be aware of what the people around you are doing. That's why your cubicles don't go all the way up to the...
correct. Yeah, we have to be able to see what everybody's doing.
See and hear everybody.
Mm-hmm.
How many,
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, how many
Yeah,
dispatchers do you guys have?
We have approximately a little over 100. We have 115 positions. I think we have 9 or 10 vacancies right now, which should be getting filled here pretty soon.
Yeah.
But we have about 100. That's including supervisors.
So I noticed a ton of monitors in front of each station. Can you tell us a little bit about what activities a 911 dispatcher does? I mean, here we are. In mind, you're just sitting there on the phone just talking to us, but it seems like there's a lot more going on than that.
So each position, the ones that you see right in front, those are all 911 phone positions. So they have 2 screens for the phone, which one is the actual telephone and one's a mapping system. And then we have 3 more screens that are used for our CAD system, which we can pull up another map, our CAD system, and another computer that they can work off of if they need to pull up websites or emails. The dispatch system, or the dispatch consoles have a status screen which shows all of the officers' activity, and they have another computer that's for our downlink for our helicopter, and then they have 3 CAD screens.
Yes, they have one, they have the 2, one CAD screen, one on the left, and one on the right is the status screen.
Okay. A lot of screens we have to look at on a daily basis.
Yeah, so you guys are doing your major multitasking because you have to keep up with all those police officers where they're located.
Correct.
Take the phone call, and then monitor, and then kind of still pay attention to what's going on around you with the other dispatchers because they may need your assistance. Is that how it works?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Anytime we
Wow.
have a priority call, everybody kind of jumps in and helps. If we have a water rescue, somebody will be on the phone with a person that's on the boat that may be sinking or in distress, while we have other call takers who are calling, Coast Guard and Fish and Wildlife and Marine Patrol and
fire rescue.
so we have everybody jumps in to help when we have a situation like that going down.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, we want to clarify. We want to make sure everybody understands that these guys are from the Tampa Police Department, and each jurisdiction does act differently. And Tammie is going to remind us of that as we go through this webinar because, oddly enough, I was actually surprised by this. Not every jurisdiction has the same type of procedures for the 911 calls. So I don't know if you want to tell us anything about that, Tammie or Brian.
So, right. So each agency has their own policy in the way that they do things. So the way we do something, what we handle calls. For example, Temple Terrace, I know that they take calls and dispatch at the same person does it. They're not as big as we are as an agency. So the way we do it is we have someone taking a call and we have a separate person on the radio with the officers. So that's just how we do it. Our policies and our procedures might be different than Temple Terrace, might be different than HTSO or Pinellas or whomever. So it just depends on where you are and who you're talking to.
And some to do nationwide training, some don't. Tammie and I were on the phone the other day prepping for this meeting, everyone, and we were discussing some of the things that had gone down in the past with them and how some of these major incidents that have happened around the world, they actually have trained on what happened in the call center after the fact, which was really interesting. I imagine that it's like with most things, we all have to kind of learn the hard way sometimes.
Correct.
So just so we understand, how do you guys know how to pinpoint the territory? Like, how do you know whether you're going to pull in the sheriff's department or you're going to pull in the Tampa PD? How does that work?
So when somebody calls 911 from their cell phone, the cell phone coordinates bounce off of the cell towers, which gives us a general area of where somebody's calling from. So basically, Fowler Avenue is the worst when somebody's calling from a cell phone, because they could get Tampa Police, Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office, Temple Terrace, USFPD, because Fowler runs through all of those agencies. So if you're calling somewhere on Fowler Avenue, you could get either any one of us, depending on your cell phone service and what tower it hits off of.
And we were discussing the fact before too that the cell phone carrier that you have is actually really important when it comes to 911. And Tammie had mentioned to me before Rapid SOS. Was that the name of it?
Yeah, Rapid SOS is a company that we use in conjunction with our 911 system. It's incorporated into our 911 phone system. So prior to this, we would use lat and longitude to find cell callers, because that comes from the cell phone towers. With Rapid SOS, it comes from the your map locator on your phone, kind of like what Lyft and Uber Eats uses to find you when you place an order or need a ride. So it goes based on your geolocation on your location services on your cell phone.
Right.
So when we get a 911 call, we use both services. We use the Rapid SOS and we use our Annie and Allie, and compare both to make sure that we send units out to the correct location. Typically, it's pretty much spot on.
Does Verizon and Sprint and all them, they all work the same they all use, I guess, are patched into that dispatch as well? Or is there any carriers that don't utilize that, cell phone carriers?
As far as I know, most of the major ones, AT&T, Verizon, Sprint, Metro, T-Mobile.
All of them. I think the only ones that don't are the people that have phones that are on older operating systems.
Yeah.
So if they haven't they have an old phone, then it won't work.
Yeah, you have to have certain operating system for Android and Apple in order for the Rapid SOS to work.
What do you guys think the most common mistake people make is when they call 911?
Well, most of the time they don't have the correct address, or they're confused as to, like, if they're on a street or an avenue or north or south, or it's usually something with the location is usually where they kind of go wrong, which is where we ask the person for the location, we make them verify it, or we ask them to verify it, and then we use the mapping system to kind of verify what they're saying, and then we go from there.
I could see this might happen in community associations. You might have a situation where you have visitors at the community, or you have maybe even a contractor at the community, and they don't really know what the physical address is. So that would be helpful in you guys locating where they're at.
Yeah, a lot of people don't. A lot of times they don't. If they're visiting someone or they're at an apartment, they don't know the actual address, or they know the address, like the main address of the apartment complex, not necessarily the address of the building that they're in. So we get this. There's a lot of confusion there sometimes.
So if somebody said, I'm at the, I don't know, Tampa Palms, I'm at the Tampa Palms Association, that doesn't help you guys any, I would assume.
No, Tampa Palms is pretty big, so we would need something. I mean, it's cross streets, landmarks, you could describe the building, or we need something, look for a piece of anything that gives us a better location.
Okay, and that makes sense. So there's a bunch of W's that I know you guys go by when people call as the information that you're going to get, that the operators are going to ask. And I notice there's a lot of times people get frustrated because you're on the phone with them still. You've already dispatched the responders, but you're still on the phone with them asking questions. And I was going to give you guys the opportunity to explain what that whole process is.
Okay. So when somebody calls in an emergency, whether it's an in-progress call or they just had a fight with, their other half or something, there's questions that we have to ask, and we start with, where are you at? That's obviously the biggest question, because we need to know where to send the responders. What is going on? What's the emergency? What's happening right now?
Who?
The when.
Who's involved? When did it happen? Because sometimes they'll say that, you know, they come home from work and they're yelling and screaming that they've been robbed. Okay, well, when you come home and your house is broken into, you're not robbed, you were burglarized. So a lot of miscommunication there too. And so we need to know when this happened. Did it just happen? Did you come home and then you see somebody in your house? Were you gone all day and we don't know what time this happened? So when is a big question. We need to know when did the incident occur. If there's any weapons, we need to know if anybody has weapons for our officer safety and for citizen safety. Who's involved? Is it, you know, a relationship? Is it somebody that you know, somebody you don't know? And why? Why is this person wanting to commit suicide, or why is he fighting with you? You know, those are the important questions. And when we get into the who, we always ask a description starting with head to toe. Describe the person. Are they white, black, Hispanic, Asian? What are they wearing? You know, description, clothing wise. Shoes are a big thing. A lot of people don't change their shoes when they're committing a crime. They may throw off their shirt and throw it, you know, the dumpster or whatever, but getting a description of their shoes is kind of big.
Oh, that's interesting.
Because you know they're not going to get rid of their Nikes.
Right. It depends on what's happening. It's like a major in-progress call. We're not going to ask all these questions. We're going to send the call once we know where it is, and then we'll ask these questions while the officers are responding. But if it's something that's delayed, like someone's been gone for a week and they found out their house is broken into, we're going to get all the information we need and then send the call. So it really just depends on what the person is calling about.
And I think there were, I'm sorry, go ahead.
When we have an in-progress call, the dispatchers, call takers are trained to do a quick dispatch, which means that they just type the address, a very quick description of what's going on in the comments, and then they hit enter. And that call is already going down to the dispatch to be dispatched out while they're still continuing to update the call with what the caller's giving.
Right. So if you guys ever hear all the a 911 emergency call on the media or something like that, just keep in mind they've all been edited out. You don't really know how the start and the finish of it for sure, but because there is a lot of that material going around the internet. But also the fact that that was one thing I noticed when I was listening to these, is that many people get frustrated because you're asking them questions and they're like, just send them. Why haven't you sent them yet? So they have to understand, look, they're going to stay on the phone with you. And sometimes, especially if it's an emergency situation, you guys would still stay on the phone with them until the first responders arrive, correct?
Correct. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, a lot of suicide callers will keep them on the phone until the police arrive. If they're feeling suicidal, any type of in-progress call where we still need to gather information as to what's going on to let the officers know, especially if the suspect is still on scene. Any type of like burglary in progress, any of those types of calls, we will keep you on the line until the police get there.
And every call has different priorities depending upon the situation. I'm not going to make you name all of them here on the webinar today, but can you give us the top ones that mean that you're sending someone out right away?
Priority one is, that's our in progress, life-threatening, somebody's got a gun, somebody's just been shot. That call goes down immediately. And that's more for life-threatening, somebody is going to get hurt.
Right.
Priority two is another one that we send down, which is not an in progress, but it's still a priority call that we have to, more than likely going to run lights and sirens to, depending on what type of call it is. I mean, we have priority two calls, like an audible alarm going off at a business. They're not necessarily going to run lights and sirens for that, but if it's a violent domestic, they may. And that would be considered a priority two, priority one if they have weapons.
All right.
And then you got priority 3, 4 that are delayed crimes.
I know that, do you guys ever get many non-emergency calls from community association disputes? Because we in the world of community association know that there's a lot of, these are their homes, these are their personal property, so there's a lot of animosity that could occur over boards making decisions or people not following procedures like they should. And do you ever get any calls like that?
For that type of stuff, not really. I mean, it's more so like neighbor things, but disputes over
I don't think I've ever gotten a call from a board meeting. Yeah.
Well, I think it's important for people to understand that unless it is an emergency situation, there are, and I'm going to post when we're done, there are some numbers that Tammie's given me, some links to some websites on the Tampa PD where you can go and report things that are not priority number one emergencies. So you definitely don't want to call 911 just because your neighbors ticked you off and you guys are yelling back and forth at each other. I mean, if you're having a dispute with someone and you feel like they're harassing you in your neighborhood, which I could see that happening with some of the stuff that goes on, that type of thing would not be an emergency 911 call, unless, of course, there's a weapon involved.
Right. Or the person is, violent and, physically threatening you.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I mean, like,
okay.
We just don't want people calling 911 for, prostitution, drug dealing, loud music complaints, those types of calls are what we're getting on 911. Because people don't know it's easier to call 911 than dial a 7-digit number.
Yeah, well, yeah, because and 911's everywhere, but none of the other numbers are usually posted anywhere. I really think it would be good for the community association to have a number, because they all have signs posted about emergencies and safety around their pool and clubhouse areas. It would not be a bad idea to have their jurisdiction's local non-emergency number there posted so that anybody can access it.
Correct. Mm-hmm. That's a good idea.
Now we talked about this yesterday, Tammie, children around pools. And if you had any, before we get to the whole swimming pool situation, do you have any recommendations, Jason, on how parents or grandparents can train their children for emergency situations where they have to call 911, just as far as material goes, where they should keep the material? Are there things they can retrieve from the Tampa Police Department that helps them train the kids?
We actually, I have a team of dispatchers that actually go to schools, community events, and we even do tours here at the comm center, teaching the kids what to do in an emergency situation, how to find their address, why we ask the questions that we do, stay on the line until we tell them to hang out. So we do go to these events and teach small kids this. The biggest problem is them knowing their address. So when we go to these schools and events, that's the biggest thing that we preach to parents, is to make sure that they understand and know their address. If they don't know, put it in a specific spot where they know to go get it. I taught my son his address at 3 years old, and he knows exactly where to go get it, where to find it. And even if they don't know how to read or say the street, if they can read off the numbers and the letters and the address, that's helpful. We tell the kids in the school to leave it by your, if you have a landline phone, or put it on the refrigerator. That way, if there's an emergency, they know exactly where to go get the information.
Right, yeah. It makes sense, and I'm sure it would be difficult. But maybe if they're older children, maybe keep that number handy, the same place that you might put your mail. So your unopened mail or bills might be sitting right there, and you'll have a bill with your address on it. Right. There's been times where I've been in a situation where I just had like a brain burp, and I'm thinking, what is my address? I forgot my address. And I could see where, if you're in a situation with an emergency, you could do that.
You can. Yeah, we have that too.
Happens all the time.
Yep.
Different people just respond differently to when they're under pressure. So we'll keep pertinent information, whether it be in a drawer where they can access it, or on the refrigerator, and kind of go through a little routine, I guess, with the kids and talk about where all this information is kept.
Yep.
This might not be your area of expertise. Does the Tampa Police Department have a community liaison that would reach out, that actually the communities can contact about having someone in their jurisdiction come out and talk about neighborhood affairs?
Yeah, we have our District 1 lady just retired recently, and they haven't replaced her yet. But District 2, we have a neighborhood affairs liaison. Her name is Caitlin Parrish. And District 3 is Olivia Harley. The lady is actually looking over District 1 right now as well until they get a replacement over there. So anybody can reach out to those two ladies, and they deal with everything community, neighborhood related.
That might not be a bad idea to have actually the boards to do, you know, every 2 years maybe, have them come in and speak or help them set up some kind of community watch or however they want to do it. What about and do the fire and the police department offer these types of, well, you said that would be the police department, so the fire department would offer classes too. I think we would just have to reach out to them, but can your person help us with that as well?
They might know who is in charge with Tampa Fire. I don't know offhand.
Okay.
But they may have the contact person over there for their neighborhood liaison.
Okay. And you've sent me a couple of links. You sent me their email addresses here too, so I'll be posting that as well on our website after the webinar. Actually, I'll post it with a copy of the live webinar or the recording of the webinar. What if you have, well, we've already kind of talked about this, somebody not sure of their address, they just need to know what their crossroads are. What about with regard to the swimming pool? Now we're getting into talking about children at the swimming pool. Tammie, you brought up a very good point yesterday when we were talking on the phone about a mother that leaves the pool area because she's just going to go run to her unit really quick and come right back. You want to tell us a little bit about that?
I mean, the biggest thing is watching your children and making sure that whoever you're leaving your children with are responsible enough to watch them when you're not there. A lot of smaller children drown because they're being left with kids that shouldn't be watching them. You know, I wouldn't leave an 8-year-old in charge of watching a 2-year-old while you run up to your apartment to get snacks. So it's just making sure that you're responsible and knowing who's watching your children. I mean,
And too, you know, it's just that one, many things happen when you just take your eyes off of things for just a few minutes. When you think, oh, it's just a few minutes, it's not going to make a difference. That few minutes not only can make a difference in one child's life, it could also make a difference in the child that it is, or the other children that are there that experience it and traumatize them for life as well. You tell your 10-year-old son to watch your 4-year-old child, and you know, if something happens to the 4-year-old, the 10-year-old's got to live with that the rest of his life. So that gets into a whole nother topic about parenting, but it's not something that everybody thinks about. You think it's so innocent. I'm just going to walk across the street real quick. I'm going to go grab a cold soda or whatever it may be. Go ahead.
We're not just talking about pools either. I mean, even the beaches. You know, parents lose sight of their child for 2 seconds and they're in the water. You know, because the beaches get packed and, you know, they take off running and then.
You know, bathtub, we've got.
Bathtub, yeah.
Somebody walks out for a second, next thing you know, the kid's underwater and they're drowning or they drown or just takes a second.
Yeah.
It's amazing. You know, one thing that may be a big deal in gated communities that we work with are gate access codes. So how do we make sure that, or how do the board members make sure that that 911 or the responders can get through those gates and not have to sit there and wait for somebody to let them in to access the emergency?
We have an email address set up specifically for gate codes for communities to send us gate codes when they update it. I know some communities update it once a month or whatever, but we do have a specific email address that they could email us these gate codes, and what we do is we enter them into our CAD system for responders.
So you think most
I'm sorry, go ahead.
You think most jurisdictions use that then, that same thing?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure if anybody else uses it. I mean, I'm sure they've got something, but I'm not sure if some of the other jurisdictions also use that. If they've got a central area where you can send gate codes or anything like that. One of our managers mentioned that there's something called Yelp, YELP, where they do an installation and it has like a gate. I guess it's like a gate pass or something. But she said that it costs between $500 to $700 to install on the gate, and the first responder turns on the siren and the gate opens upon the siren coming on. Yeah.
So for communities that can't afford that, well, I'm assuming if you live in a gated community, the community probably can't afford that system. So yeah. I would imagine that.
Yeah, as long as we have the gate code, we can get access.
Okay.
Sometimes too,
And
when officers go out to locations and we have a gate code that is an old gate code, they'll either get with a resident there or they'll find out what the gate code is and we'll get that updated. But I mean, if community members can give that information so we can keep it updated regularly, that would be perfect.
okay. And again, I'll post that information on our website. Now, I know I've listened to a lot of 911 call videos lately, and it seems like one of the biggest problems is when someone's in an emergency situation, they're not giving their full attention to the person, to the dispatcher on the phone. And they're trying to answer, you know, you can hear people walking up to and ask them what happened, and they're explaining to the people that are there what happened when they should be talking to the dispatcher and telling her what happened and answering her questions. So I didn't know if you could tell us about, without us going into any life-saving methods, because we're not going to touch on that tonight, anything that they should focus on with the 911 call operator. Any comments you want to give?
Well, I mean, that happens a lot where someone is either arguing with somebody else or they're not really paying attention. And the call taker tries the best they can to get locations and stuff, but sometimes the person sometimes they're not cooperative. They're just not really focused on what the call taker is saying. They're just trying to call 911. So the call taker will ask the location or ask for the location. And if we can get it, great. And at least we can send an officer out there to where the person said. But, you know, we can only ask so much. We can't, you know, yell at them or anything. So they try as best they can to get this person to take control, but it just doesn't always work the way we want it to.
So it's just like, well, you just want the public to understand, look, pay attention to what, yes, they may or may not have dispatched anybody yet. You may not have given them enough information to start the dispatch. So that's something that anybody calling 911 needs to remember. You were going to tell me about an incident where things have gone terribly wrong. I think you and I had talked about something that happened, Tammie.
While on the phone with a call taker?
Yeah.
We had a lady call in. She had an injunction against her. I don't know if it was her husband or boyfriend. And he had called threatening to come over and do harm. So she called 911, obviously in fear. And while she was on the phone with the 911 call taker, he showed up at the residence and broke in and ultimately shot and killed her while on the phone with our taker. So we do get those types of calls. Doesn't end very well.
Well, and we talked about that one lady that, or the one thing where the kid that got caught in the car. This was really interesting. Anybody that's not heard this story, I actually watched this 911 call somewhere, and I guess you guys saw it in the training session. I'll let you explain it. This happened last year, I think.
Kyle Plush, was that last year or this year?
I'm not really sure.
It was not too long ago. It happened up in, I believe, Columbus, Ohio. A 16-year-old went into the back seat of his, I think it was a Honda Odyssey van. And he was in the school parking lot. I guess he was getting his bag out. And something happened where the seat, I guess
pinned him down, didn't it?
I guess it folded down on top of him, basically crushing his abdomen. And he had his cell phone in his pocket. So obviously he was trapped and was basically being crushed. So he called 911 using Siri. The call taker obviously, he couldn't hear what the call taker was asking him. He was just repeatedly saying that he was at whatever the name of the school was, gave a description of his van, and said, "Tell my mom I love her," that he knew he was dying. Units were dispatched out. They went to the school, but they didn't find him in the parking lot. I guess they didn't check with certain parking lot, but he ultimately ended up passing away, and, you know, very sad situation.
And he couldn't, like, he'd probably never talked or done a course or gone over any kind of emergency situation seminar to where he knew what they were going to be asking him. So the only information he was giving was, I'm stuck, I'm at the school, did he ever even give the color of the vehicle? I mean, bless his heart, he didn't.
I thought he did. I'm not sure though. But he was saying exactly where he was at, you know, what school parking lot he was in and, you know, his vehicle. And, I mean, according to the cell phone ping, it did show that he was in the school, but officer checked the whole area and ultimately didn't find him. I think Dad ended up finding him a couple hours later in the parking lot.
This is sad.
Yeah, it was very sad.
Well, in situations where you had said earlier, the caller should turn their attention to their clothing, their description of them, their shoes, vehicles, anything else that you can touch on? Vehicles.
Make, model of the vehicle, anything distinguishing about the car helps. A direction of travel helps a lot. A lot of times we don't get that. We just get like up the street. So a direction of travel helps a lot. Especially, it depends on the type of call. What else?
The sunroof, tinted windows, if it has a spoiler, any types of graphics on the car, anything that's going to make that car stand out.
Right. Anything that an officer could spot quickly.
Because many times they might pass that car coming to the scene, and if they have that information from you that you guys have put in the system already, they'll be able to hopefully catch that, maybe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, a lot of times an officer might pass the car to the person on the way to the call. So if we know what we're looking for, it helps a lot.
Mm-hmm.
If there's an auto accident within a community, so let's say it's within a private community that they own their own roads, that would not be something that they would send out a police officer to do a report on, correct?
Correct. If it's private property, normally we do not unless there are injuries or if like a wrecker or a tow truck is needed. If there's like a hazmat situation, injuries, things like that, we will send an officer or hit and runs. We send officers out for. But if it's just, you know, a minor accident or minor vehicle crash on private property, we normally do not respond to those.
Okay. And, you know, one thing that Tammie and I had discussed again is the deal with people that, let's say you've made a call to a dispatcher and you're awaiting a response. Oh, you've got disconnected, or you've hung up from the dispatcher, or you've hung up from the dispatcher and the responders still have not arrived. You guys want to tell us what the process is with you calling that person back, what the response time is and whatnot?
Yeah, so if the call just drops, we'll call them back right away. But if someone just wants to check on the status of their call, if they call 911, if nothing's changed, we don't want them to call 911 again. We'd prefer them to call a non-emergency number. And just as long as you have the location that you gave the first call taker, then it makes it very easy to pull up the call. Anybody can just find it and tell you the status. What was there?
So you're referring to like if calls are holding for extended period of time?
So,
Well, no, I think you and I talked about getting disconnected. You had said
Okay.
they'll call back within like 45 seconds. They'll try to call you back if you get disconnected from them. So sometimes it might be a good idea to just wait and let them call you back before you jump on it and start dialing them. Because it does go in as a new 911 call. It might get answered by another dispatcher, and it just takes time to transfer over to you. So
Yeah. Immediately call back. Meanwhile, the other call taker got disconnected is immediately dialing back, which is sending them to voicemail probably, which happens a lot.
can you tell us a little bit, this kind of goes into, we'll start closing out a little bit. Can you tell us a little bit about the types of crimes that should be reported online, that you guys have that website for, which again, I will put on our website so that our managers and board members can find. These are non-911 types of incidents.
Correct. So they're more delayed things like check forgery, minor criminal mischief, missing persons from like group homes, especially if they're habitual. What else? Like phone scams, the retail theft, petty retail theft.
Legal dumping.
Yeah,
harassing phone calls. Yeah, all those types of calls could be made over the phone using our door system.
Mhm.
You know what I just thought about? What is that? Okay, so silver alert, when you see that up on the highway, silver alert is when an elderly person's missing, correct?
Correct, if they're in a vehicle.
Okay, what's the other alerts that they put out on the highway that we should know about? Do you know them?
Amber.
Amber alert, or for missing children.
Well, yeah, we all get those on our phone now.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay,
Silver
that's the
alert.
only one?
Yeah,
Silver and amber are usually the ones that I see. I don't really see any other ones.
yeah. Usually the ones on the interstate are silver alerts because the elderly person was last seen driving a vehicle. Because if they were on foot, they wouldn't be silver alert. They would just be a missing person. They have to be driving a vehicle for it to be a silver alert.
Oh, okay. Well, and I'm going to ask you one last question before we close it out, and I wanted for you to tell me a little bit about filing the penalties when someone files a false police report or tries to file a false police report.
Yeah, so there's a Florida statute, I'm not really sure what it is off the top of my head, but it's a first degree misdemeanor, punishable up to, it's a year in jail and a fine of up to $1,000 for the first 4 offenses. I think I read in the statute that if someone has done it in the past, it can be upgraded to a 3rd degree felony, something like that. But there's some stipulations to that too, but it's usually a first degree misdemeanor.
Okay. And you guys get some of those every now and then, but I would assume that if you have, I could just see where someone's just in a neighborhood situation where you have a community that someone was so fed up that they just kind of, he's doing it again. He's cutting his grass or whatever it is that I've seen some of these. Now, I told Tammie, I'm an avid YouTuber. I go on there, I go down those rabbit holes. I saw one incident where there were these 2 neighbors that were having it out. And this one neighbor was crazy. She was doing all kinds of crazy stuff across the street, and they had it all on tape. And so I can imagine there's things like that you guys get calls on every now and then that you say, okay, this is not the right number to call.
Yeah, we do get crazy calls like that.
Quite a bit.
If you could, I would tell people, the 911 center, the 911 calls that you can find on YouTube are very interesting because I actually have learned a lot just from listening in, but you need to take them for what they are. They're out of context. You might not always get the full call. You might not always get the full circumstances. So don't start placing blame on the dispatcher or whoever else or the police department or anything else just because someone says that you should. Know the whole scenario before you make a judgment. I personally like them because I just have learned so much, and I'm a crime buff, and any kind of documentary I can find on crime, I will watch it, and it's kind of close to those. So, but that is where I saw the one about the young boy that was caught in the car, and I guess this we'll end it with this one last question. What is the worst thing about doing what you guys do is not being able to have closure on what happened. If a situation's occurring, you're there, you're walking them through the whole thing, and yet you may not always hear back as to what the actual final outcome was.
Right, or what the whole story was or what happened, because we only get bits and pieces of it from the caller. A lot of times we don't know the whole full story or what happened at the end. So a lot of dispatchers don't get closure on some of the calls.
Yeah, we have to come back the next day or a couple days later just to read the report. That's 2 or 3 days or whatever after it's already happened.
And then some reports are blocked to where we can't read them, so then they really don't get closure.
So if somebody, let's say somebody gets a call and that you've actually helped them in a life-saving situation, let's say an elderly person has fallen, the 911 operator has helped them and saved their life essentially. What would they do in order to send out a thank you or to help just to, find that dispatcher? Is there a way for them to say, hey, this whoever took this phone call, I want to find out. I want to send them flowers. I want to send them candy, something like that. How would we find out who it was? Is there a way to do that?
Yeah, they can call the supervisor, call the non-emergency number, request to speak to the supervisor, and we can look up and see who took that call.
As long as you know it was a good turnout, not a bad turnout. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you never know. Well, thank you guys so much for taking time talking to us tonight. I mean, this is stuff that, it may not be so specific to the community association world that we live in, and what we do at BMIs, but I think anybody that has children or, anybody could utilize this information. It's really good. Did y'all want to close out, or did y'all have anything you'd like to say before we close out?
I think
No, we're good.
Well, thank you so much for having us. It's been fun, and hope we answered a lot of your questions and provided you with a bunch of information that's useful. And
you're welcome. I told you I'm going to come kidnap you and make you come to one of our luncheons one day and speak in front of everybody. You'll love that, right?
Okay. No. Brian can speak.
Well, again, guys, we want to thank everybody who attended the webinar, and we will be posting the recording on our website. Along with that, some additional information as far as the links that Tammie Bishop has provided us that will be helpful in the case of an emergency, and you live in that jurisdiction. So I think the first step would be, if you want to take any kind of action on bettering this disconnect between you and anybody else with the emergency situation, the first thing you need to do is pinpoint who would be the responding fire department, the responding police department, yada, 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 correct? Am I right? Am I saying that right, guys?
Yep, that's correct. Okay.
So thank you all, and everyone have a wonderful Thursday evening and a great weekend. Oh, we have a long weekend coming up. So